thanks for asking me to do this. I don't know whose idea it was, but I'm glad to do this, glad to be here. And if it goes bad, it's Delaney's fault because she's the one who sent me the text. So I'm Dr. Bruce Evans. Most of you know me. If you don't, that's okay. You might have seen me up here on stage with some of these theater weirdos and doing shows and wearing goofy costumes and all that. But this time I'm not anymore. But yeah, right. Hersey, that's the last comment. So I was asked to talk about environmental stewardship. I don't teach environmental stewardship. I teach about animals. I teach about anatomy. I teach that stuff. But I have taught ecology. I've thought about some of these issues. So I thought, okay, you probably heard about what can you do to save the world? Recycle. Yeah, what are you going to recycle? Plastic bags? No, they won't take them. Sorry about that. The plastic straws at Starbucks? They don't exist anymore, right? The plastic cups do, though. So where do you put those when you're done at Starbucks? In the recycling bin at Starbucks. Oh, they don't have one, right? Maybe they need one. Maybe they need to work on that. It is an improvement. They don't have plastic straws. Great, but work on things a little bit at a time, and maybe we'll get somewhere. So I'm going to go back to my childhood, if you don't mind, back with Abe Lincoln and long time ago. But 1970. How many of you remember 1970? Exactly, right. In a previous life, maybe. But 1970, April of 1970, I was 7 years old. Woo, first grade. And it was the first Earth Day. If you go back to 1962, Rachel Carson, I wasn't even born then, so don't go there. But Rachel Carson got all up in arms about the bald eagle that we were losing and other things in the environment because of DDT being sprayed to help keep pests off our crops and all that. And the shells of the eagles and other birds were becoming fragile, and they were not reproducing, and we were losing our national symbol, right? So 8 years later, we got Earth Day. And as a first grader, I drew a picture, because we had a contest, and I drew a picture of a steam shovel digging garbage out of a creek. And that picture was on the window of the local grocery store in Nichols, New York. I thought I was somebody, because I got honorable mention. It wasn't for a long time that I realized honorable mention meant that I lost. But nonetheless, there it was, and that's how I was introduced to environmental stewardship. Oh, don't put the trash in the creek, put it in the trash can. Nobody recycled in 1970. Nobody cared about recycling. Nobody thought about it. That was something that came along later. So, have we come a long way since then? I don't know. We recycle things. We talk about environmental stewardship. But the environment gets dirtier and dirtier, So, when I was asked to do this, I thought, what am I going to talk about? I don't know. So I just decided I'd tell some stories. I like stories. Sometimes I think I'm good at them. Sometimes I put my students to sleep. So, your choice, either way. So stories. And these are somewhat connected maybe, but here we go. So there's a biblical mandate for us to take care of what has been entrusted to us. And there are all sorts of verses you can pick out in the Bible that help us with that. Jesus talked about taking care of the sheep. Jesus talked about taking care of the people. We come back into Genesis. What's Genesis 2:15? The Lord God took the man, put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. Right? Trash it, use it, abuse it. I don't think so. That's not what it says, right? We're given that mandate. So go all the way. The first book and the last book of the Bible, in case you didn't know that. Hope you do. Anyway, Revelation. The nations are angry. Thy wrath has come. The King James, just good King James for you. Right? Time of the dead, they should be judged. And thou shouldest give reward unto thy servants the prophets, and to the saints, and them that fear thy name, and shouldst destroy them which destroy the earth. That's just pretty harsh language, right? But that's what our God says. doesn't want us to destroy the earth. He wants us to take care of it. So maybe we ought to think about doing that, right? The earth is the Lord. It's not yours. I went out and mowed my lawn yesterday. It was very good. Actually, I mowed God's lawn because it's not mine. Right? I've got the deed. Says you own the lawn, you must mow it. And if I don't mow it, my neighbors get upset. Well, it's not my yard, it's God's. Well, they still get upset. And they don't like my dandelions. So, everything is God's, so we ought to take care of it. He put us here for a purpose. So, story number 1. How many have been to New Orleans? Pretty jazzy place, right? Yeah, and good food. So New Orleans has been around since the early 1700s. A major trading center near the mouth of the Mississippi River, and if you go there now, you will find it's a big city, skyscrapers, a beautiful levee, and beignets, and chicory coffee. You know, all the fun things, right? That's what we associate with. But New Orleans is surrounded by water. It's surrounded by the Mississippi. Comes around, goes right around the city, and goes out into the Gulf of Mexico. It's a mess. That's a terrible place to build a city. It's going to flood. The Mississippi, the largest river on the North American continent, draining 40% of the continent, and all the water's coming into your front yard. Good, let's build a city. Right? New Orleans, it floods. So floods happen. How do you stop the floods in the Mississippi from happening? Levees. Does that stop them? Nope, sorry, so that's not the answer. What else? What else are you going to do? You know, the average time between the time a professor asks a question and then answers himself is 7 seconds. And by now you've forgotten what the question was, so, right?
Divert the river.
Divert the river and flood somebody else. Suck it all up in a vacuum cleaner and put it where? Straws, get them straws back and we'll suck it all up in the paper straws now, right? And none of those work. The river is going to flood. Sorry. 1927. This happened.
The greatest flood in American history was upon us. We did not see our lands again for 4 months. Will Percy, 1927.
A rolling giant sea covered 26,000 square miles of the Mississippi Valley, inundating parts of 7 states and forcing 500,000 people from their homes. The system of levees designed to hold back the river had failed. Unlike the barren Colorado, the Mississippi is lush and inviting. But it is difficult to control and impossible to.
If I show you the whole thing, we'll be here forever. It flooded enormous amounts of the country in 1927. So what was the response? Let's build levees. If I'm living in St. Louis and I got flooded out, what do I want to do? I don't want to water in my backyard, not in my front yard. I don't want it in my living room, if I have a living room left, right? So who's going to take care of that? The government, right? And the federal government stepped in and said, what? All right, we'll build the levees. And they spent about $1 billion in 1930 money. That's some not chump change, right? And they built all these levees. And so the next time they had a flood, the levees broke. Isn't that sweet? 1993. Y'all don't remember that one either. I do. You've had
Hey there, my
your
friend
comments,
Calcon here,
no.
and I know that I might be interrupting your YouTube experience, but stick with me all the way up until the very end, and I promise you I'm going to do my best to make it.
There had been some.
So this was all
Highway
throughout the
40.
Midwest.
My partner Gene Jackson is in Chopper 5 with Alan Barklage at this hour, and they're over Highway 40. If you can see it, Gene, good morning.
Jeff, that's the trick. Can you see it? It's tree line, and the water is almost up to the tops of the trees here in Chesterfield Valley. And this is in an area where there's not supposed to be water, so you can imagine the damage that's being done. And Jeff, the debris is just horrendous. There are floating crates, barrels with who knows what's in them. Cars, you name it.
Gene, we can see we just saw at the top of the screen the Daniel Boone Bridge there. That gives people a pretty good perspective on the area we're talking about. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, there's just no way to get near that bridge.
No way. In fact, the entire section of Highway 40 is closed in both directions from the Daniel Boone Bridge back to almost Chesterfield Mall to Clarkson Road.
As Saturday turned into Sunday, the attention of St. Louis and the world would.
And it flooded. It rained for 40 days and 40, no, that was a different one. But it rained for a long time, every day. In the Midwest in 1993, flooded out Iowa, St. Louis, and many, many cities down below. And what do? You build higher levees. What do levees do? They keep the water somewhere else, right? Until they break, and then they come in and destroy everything, which they do. They will break. And you build up the levees, and what happens? You put this river that's supposed to spread out, and you put it into a channel, and what happens? It has nowhere to go, and the water gets higher and higher and higher as it goes to the next town. Then they have to build bigger and bigger levees until finally New Orleans has to build 1,000-foot levees. And, you just can't control the rivers. We spend billions of dollars to try to control these rivers. And environmental stewardship would say, hey, that's not working. It's never going to work. Maybe we ought to try something else. And I don't have all the answers, but I know that doesn't work. Okay, let's talk about oil. How many drove your car here? Me. Don't let them in. Leave them out there in the cold. Drove your car? What'd you put in it? Oil and gas, right? Where'd the gas come from? Crude oil, right? So where does the oil come from that you go over to Owens and put in your car? Where's it come from? Saudi Arabia. Where else? A lot of it comes from, don't you know? Anybody from Canada? Thank you for the oil, right? So, do you know about the Alberta tar sands? Where are you from? Ontario. I'll be there this summer. I'll see you there. But in Alberta, if you go out west, northwest part of Canada, and you will find Alberta. And if you go into the northern part of Alberta, you will find these immense tar sands that have dirty oil. They have oil that is trapped in sand. And what can we do? We can't extract it very easily. But we can extract it. And we go up there and we dig up the dirt and we extract it by heating it and throwing chemicals at it, and we get oil. And we get gas and we get all these things that help us out, right? It destroys the environment. So here's what that looks like. And by the way, if you're on your cell phone, please get off your cell phone if you don't want to pay attention.
To bring out your true
Just pay
colors.
attention.
Burt's Bees Beauty.
All right, here we go.
Our dependence on oil comes at a steep cost, and it may be more serious than most people realize. Hi, I'm Rebecca Brayton, and welcome to WatchMojo.com. And today we're speaking with filmmaker Shannon Walsh to learn more about the Alberta tar sands and her documentary, H2 Oil. So what are the tar sands or the oil sands?
Yeah, the tar sands, and I think using tar sands is more clear than oil sands, the rebranding by the industry. And this covers about the size of England in northern Alberta, also into Saskatchewan and other areas. And basically what it is, it's like this gooey substance that's locked in the sand that for a long time they didn't know how to get out. And they finally figured out how to get out, and some of it is what you see in my film, huge surface mining projects. There's a few other processes, but basically they're trying to heat that sand up so they can get this bitumen out of it that will then be refined into crude oil. There's so many environmental impacts of the tar sands. Some of the ones that I really focus a lot on in the film are the extreme amounts of fresh water usage, the huge amounts of carbon emissions, these tailings ponds, huge vats of toxic wastewater that are sitting very close to the river and the river systems. There's boreal forest destruction. The list goes on and on. It's really the end of the line in terms of any kind of sensible environmental project.
Tell us about the issue of the importance of oil versus water.
Yeah, I think ultimately for me that was the guiding question for the film. What is more important, water or oil? I mean, for me, it just broke my heart, and I think a lot of people would feel the same to see fresh water being expended for this dirty crude oil that was going to create more carbon emissions. There's something fundamental that we need to live in water, and oil is really about our excessive lifestyle. I really feel like the days where we could live that kind of a life are coming to an end, and we do have to take a hard look at that.
What effect are the tar sands having on that specific area?
Right at the front lines of this whole situation is this indigenous community of Fort Chipewyan that's downstream from the industry, and they were the first really to bring attention to what was happening within the land and the environment, and started saying, hey, wait a minute, what you're hearing isn't the whole truth. And so people like George Potras, who was a community leader in Fort Chipewyan, started talking about the amounts of cancers that were, and rare illnesses, autoimmune diseases that they were seeing. Not only problems in the environment, but also people dying in their community at really high numbers. Since actually the film has been out, there has been admissions by the Alberta government that these cancer rates are higher. So we know that this is true. It's just
So the Alberta tar sands are destroying the environment, huge areas of the environment. In fact, this river flows right down through this town they're showing you here, where all this toxic sludge leaks out of those ponds where it's supposed to stay, including radioactivity. It's radioactive. It's got all sorts of nasty chemicals that cause all sorts of nasty things. It flows right through this town and into their drinking water, and they end up with cancer and all sorts of... Isn't that sweet? And there it is. And what's being built, used, President Obama blocked use of it and building of it for a while, but now President Trump is promoting it. The Keystone Pipeline. I don't know if you hear about the Keystone Pipeline, but it's coming from Alberta. It's coming down through the states you see there and eventually down to Houston, so that we can ship that oil to the world or use it in the United States. And we put it in our cars, and the result is the environment is destroyed in Canada. So thanks for letting us destroy your land. No problem. That's one of the consequences, right, of what we do. So let's not use that. Let's use natural gas. So story number 3, the Marcellus Shale. The Marcellus Shale extends into many, many states, but here's Tioga County, New York. What is called the southern tier of New York. That is where I grew up. That is also where John D. Rockefeller was born. So, you know, 2 famous people from there. You're laughing. That's not... At the moment, I'm more famous than he is, so we'll go with that. Anyway. I'm going to show this first, and then I'll show you something else. They frack this. They take this shale and break it,
you to the world.
And they call it fracturing or fracking.
Watch more at linktv.org.
Today on Earth Focus, the risks of natural gas development in the Marcellus Shale, from toxic chemicals in drinking water to unregulated dumping of potentially radioactive waste. Are the health consequences worth the economic benefits? Coming up on Earth Focus. It's called Marcellus Shale, and it contains enough natural gas to supply all U.S. gas needs for 14 years.
So some of
but
you
gas
probably
development
live in
here
those
can
areas.
be a catastrophe in the making. Toxic chemicals and methane gas seep into drinking water. And now, experts fear something
He's
worse.
lighting his drinking water on
radioactive
fire.
radium in waste products. The gas business may be booming, but at what price for people? Britain's Ecologist TV explores the social and ecological consequences of gas extraction in the Marcellus Shale in this original investigative report.
This is Bradford County, northeastern Pennsylvania. This previously quiet corner of America is now at the center of a rush for natural gas extracted through a new drilling technology called hydraulic fracturing, also known as fracking. But as the ecologists discovered, fracking is a high-risk process that threatens to both destroy the environment and wreck lives.
It makes me mad. It makes me very mad. Because my life is over without my water.
There was just like this red, nasty water just coming, just oozing out the side of the mountain, just the side of the hill.
And now hydraulic fracturing is heading for Europe. The UK, Poland, France, and Germany are all next in the frack firing line. This is a picture postcard part of America, but beneath these rolling hills lies a seam of gas-rich rock called Marcellus Shale. But the shale gas is far from easily accessible.
The process itself is that you drill down a few thousand feet into a layer of very dense shale, turn the well horizontally, go out and perform some other operations. Eventually you set off charges that blow holes in the pipe, and then you fill up the pipe with a liquid. And the intent is basically to get sand back in the cracks of the rock to hold it apart so the gas will flow.
Gas drilling sites, or frack pads as they are known, have begun to...
So what happens is, they'll drill down, they'll blast these chemicals into this concrete encased pipe, and they will blow it into the rock, and then they'll suck up what they can of this natural gas, if they can get it. And in the meantime, they say, oh, it's safe. The chemicals that we inject in there will not get into the drinking water. Well, some people around there can light their drinking water on fire because there's methane in it. That lady you saw said their water has a greasy taste to it and a chemical taste to it. And there are people who have built their homes on their property now who can't use their water. And their animals get sick and die. They get sick and die. They get cancer. All for the natural gas. So here is, New York State does not allow, at least in most of the state, they don't allow fracking. They don't allow drilling. But Pennsylvania sure does. Pennsylvania looks like this. And there's Binghamton, New York, Ithaca, the Finger Lakes, if you know that area. And see, right there's the line of Pennsylvania and New York. And there are all these wells in Pennsylvania. I told somebody earlier, Little Meadows, Pennsylvania, that's where I bought my first car. Isn't that special? 73 Plymouth, 318. Any other questions? Okay, here are wells. There are wells. I don't know why I asked. Anyway, here's a well here. There are wells all along this ridge. From here, the state line of Pennsylvania and New York, to that little spot called Tracy Creek is about a mile. That little spot right there happens to be where my brother lives. He lives in New York, about a mile and a half from these wells. And drinking water, when the drinking water gets contaminated, because it will, the water table doesn't know state boundaries. It'll get into my brother's water table, and he'll be drinking this crap water, and it's pretty sad. But Pennsylvania has condoned it. Pennsylvania will continue to do it. It's not a good solution. Here's somebody who's lost his property because of this. I love my earthly home. Oh, Lord, please save our town. 6-inch pipeline leak, diesel fuel spill, 1 hydraulic fluid spill, 2 broken hearts. All they've saved for and hoped for is gone. So how about electric cars? How many of you have a Tesla? No? They're only about $70,000. Nobody? You guys are rich college students, whatever. Electric cars are coming. Okay, Tesla's top of the line kind of stuff, and most of us won't have Teslas. But electric cars are going to be Chevys and Fords, and it's coming. About 5 million electric cars in use today. Okay, but what about consequences of that? and cell phones and computers. As I sit here with a cell phone in my pocket and my computer. The story number 5, or whatever it is, I don't know what number this is, but this story is about rare metals. What is in your cell phone? There's all sorts of things in your, what's in your cell, I have no idea. But for most of us, there are at least some rare metals, rare earth metals like neodymium, like dysprosium, like all these weird named things that if you took chemistry, you see them toward the bottom of the chart, right? And where do they come from? They come from places that are not American. Here's what goes into your cell phone. And your car batteries, if they're electric.
In July, we went to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is a giant country in Central Africa. It stretches down to southern Africa. And we went to the southern part of the DRC, as it's known, which is called the Copper Belt. It's the richest vein of copper anywhere on the planet. And it also contains about 2/3 of the entire world's supply of cobalt. Cobalt is an essential ingredient. It's in every one of our smartphones, it's in our computers, and most importantly, it's in electric vehicles. And so as the world transitions to electric vehicles, the demand for cobalt has gone skyrocketing. We wanted to see how real local Congolese people were engaging in what's effectively very much like the old California gold rush. There are thousands of people who've just flooded into this area to dig for cobalt. Everything they find is worth a lot of money at this point.
There's no protective clothing. People are just wearing whatever they're wearing. The holes in the ground where people are digging are hand dug. Supports that they use to keep the shaft open are broken bits of metal, random bits of wood. A man goes down the hole with a burlap sack, a plasticky burlap sack, which is attached to a bunch of ripped burlap sacks which act as rope, and he fills it full of cobalt. His teammates pull it up by hand. While we were there walking towards the mine, I saw this young kid walking towards me. He's 11 years old, and he was carrying probably about 30 to 40, 50 pounds of cobalt on his back. He'd never been to school, totally illiterate, and that was his only job.
The bottom line is, if you buy an electric vehicle, certainly if you buy smartphones, you really don't have 100% certainty that that mineral has not involved, at some level, child miners.
It's our concern. Children are not supposed.
So the good news, your iPhone is made by Apple, right? We know that. Apple, a couple years ago, said that they would no longer get cobalt from mines in the Congo because of the child labor and the abuse and the terrible conditions there. And in fact, recently I saw something over at Owens. Bless you. Saw something over at Owens. They now have a box there. Have you been over there lately? And they have a box there that you can, they will pay, the box will pay you money apparently for your old cell phones. Don't ever throw your old cell phones away, because first of all, it puts crap in the garbage dump that shouldn't be there because it contaminates the environment. Second of all, you get money out of them. So if we can recycle the cobalt, we don't have to have people digging and dying in the Congo. So that's a good development, right? That's a good thing. Maybe we can recycle that enough so that we can make it these conditions not happen. I have no idea. You got one you want to get rid of? I don't know. I'm sure they've got to make a profit on it, so they're probably not going to give you much. But it's better than throwing it in the trash, and you know, that's environmental stewardship. Plus, you make money at it. I'm not going to show you this in terms of time, but
内蒙古的包头是中国最大
we
的
also
稀
don't
土
speak
生产
Mandarin.
基地。尽管稀土是
Probably.
珍贵的矿，
I think that's Mandarin. How many of you have those little earbuds? Oh, come on, little earbuds? You put in your ear and listen to groovy music, like groovy. If it's not groovy, it's not worth listening to. You got one, the only person in the world's got one, you. Right? How come you don't have the big clunkers on? Big old headphones that weigh 5 pounds like they used to have when I was a kid. I just did. You got a problem? How come you don't have those? How come you can run, jog, whatever you do with those little bitty guys? Because the magnets are made out of neodymium and they are very small. And that's what runs those little guys instead of having to have big clunkers. It's the neodymium that makes the magnets, that makes that technology available. Where does neodymium come from? Mines, rare earth mines in China, where they do the same thing. They dig up the dirt, they use tons of water, they contaminate the water, it becomes radioactive and destroys villages. The technology that we have is fantastic. I don't know how these people figure these things out, the engineers. They're smarter than I am. But there are consequences. And we need to be careful about what we do and don't buy. Wind. About 4 years ago, a guy came from Virginia, came to Huntington University. I think he called me up or sent me an email or something, said, hey, can we talk about wind power in Huntington? So Dr. Hobbs and I met with him, talked to him, had him come to one of our classes, and students ripped him up. Our students ripped him up by asking him questions about how he was going to be responsible for environmental stewardship. He didn't have the answers. He never came back. But that company was trying to get the approval of the university and the community to put wind farms in Huntington County. And so far, they didn't happen. And I think primarily because of that. Wind energy is cool. Wind energy, the wind always blows in Indiana, right? One of the 10 largest wind farms in the world is in Indiana. Did you know that? Western Indiana, out in the middle of nowhere, out past Purdue, I don't know, almost in Illinois. Okay, here's what it says. Rare earth processing in China. There's China. That's part of the video I was going to show you. That's what is happening in China to get rare earth metals out of the ground. And somewhere down in here, if I can put my fingers on it. Here we go, right there. Green campaigners love wind turbines. It's great. Wind turbines, you see them driving along the highways about 80,000 feet long. But the permanent magnets used to manufacture a 3-megawatt turbine contain some 2 tons of rare earth. And where does that come from? It comes from China. And how much energy does it take to get that out of the ground? More energy than you're going to get out of the life of that turbine. It takes more energy to get that extracted out of the ground and destroy the environment to get that 2 tons of rare earth metal to put in the turbines so that we can run one windmill on one of these farms. And that's supposed to run for 25 years. That's the expected life of those turbines. You will not get the energy back out that you put in trying to get that rare earth metal. Maybe in the long run that's not going to be true if we can recycle what we've got. Maybe that's going to become something good. But at the moment, it's just destroying China. Well, it's not China. We don't live in China. Who cares? Well, God didn't say, well, Indiana is mine. He said China is mine too, right? We should care. So how about some good news? Good news. Yay! Kansas City Royals going to win the World Series. That would be good news, but it's not going to happen. Sorry. They win every 30 years. It's not their year. Okay, here's from a book which has the greatest title in the history of books. I don't need to spill that. Greatest title in history books. It's called The Marvelous Pigness of Pigs. Is that what it says? Can't read that? Get glasses. It says The Marvelous Pigness of Pigs, right? Yeah. Respecting and caring for all God's creation. And so this is a Christian man on a farm in Virginia who has written a book. It's a great book. And here's from that book. We don't expect someone to deplete the aquifer in Colorado, to grow grain to ship with military purchased oil to a feedlot that pollutes the air and water, to be slaughtered by disrespected workers, to be transported via a refrigerated truck belching diesel fumes across the country to the burger joint near where we work so we can conveniently and thoughtlessly eat it. Even if such convenience gives us time to read our Bible more. Interesting thought. Okay, here we go. The average miles per gallon for a semi-trailer truck, 6.5. It's 574 miles from Jasper, Alabama to Huntington, Indiana. I bet you didn't know that. So that means it takes 88 gallons of diesel fuel to transport one truckload of chickens from Jasper to Huntington. You get 11 gallons of diesel from 42 gallons of crude oil, therefore 336 gallons of crude oil to transport chicken from Jasper, Alabama to Huntington, Indiana. You also get some gas out of it, so that's not entirely wasteful. You ever go to KFC? You look on the wall and they say, well, where did the chicken come from today? And most of the time it says Jasper, Alabama. How come we're eating chickens in Huntington, Indiana that were raised in Jasper, Alabama? Why? I don't know. It's a business model that apparently works for KFC, right? Makes them money. But why can't we eat chickens that were raised in Huntington County? The more locally you eat, and I know, you guys are in college, and if you're eating in the dining commons, you don't have a lot of choices, right? But when you have to adult, see, that's the thing now. You've got to adult someday. I don't want to adult. Yeah, you do. Your parents want you out of the house by 35. Yeah, it's going to happen. You know, we will see. At least you're not in my house. That's fine. That's not my house. So when you get the chance to make food choices, the closer the food is raised, the closer to where you live and where you eat it, the less energy had to go in to produce it. Right? So some ideas, and this is just for Huntington County, because most of you don't live in Huntington County except you go to college here. But this is true of wherever you live. There's something. I've got to stop that, like Porky Pig. Seven Sons Farm in Roanoke, 15 miles away. They raise chickens. You can go there. You can buy freshly slaughtered chickens. You can go to the meat market in John's Meat Market in Roanoke and buy freshly slaughtered pork and beef and all these things grown and killed and raised and all that stuff in Huntington County. You can do that. It wasn't transported on a truck, you know, and the pigs coming from wherever. They came from Huntington County. And you can go to Huntington Farmers Market. Fresh food, veggies, all sorts of things, fruits that are grown in Huntington County and sold in Huntington County. Helping Hands Community Garden in Huntington by the high school. How many went to Huntington North? Nobody? One? Two? Well, Jordan doesn't count. One? And make fun of me in a red dress. You were wearing a stupid bikini, don't you tell me. Uh-huh, right. Huntington North, you go up Viking Lane to Huntington High School, and along the right in that field, the community, children, parents, Dr. Porter's wife, Natalie, is one of the people who helps to take care of that. It's vegetables and fruits that are raised right there, given to people who need it, and helping to support the community. Those kind of things. You can raise chickens in your backyard, and I can't. They'd throw me out of the neighborhood. But if you live in the country, you can. Raise your own chickens, raise your own cows, whatever you want. Eat as locally as you can.
Hey, didn't somebody plant marijuana in that garden?
That was me. I thought it was in Colorado, but well, I have no idea. I never heard that. So that's just an idea. I've presented some of the ideas for you guys. It's all you can do in that amount of time. Do y'all have questions, thoughts, ways, suggestions about ways to save or preserve the environment that God has entrusted us with?
So are wind turbines ever useful then? Or good?
They're absolutely useful. They provide lots of energy in the areas where they are, right? So that's a good thing. It saves us from using nuclear. It saves us from burning coal. It saves, right? It's because burning coal destroys the environment too. The alternatives are really not all that great. But wind turbines, as they are now, are helping the U.S. and hurting places like China. Now, granted, the companies in China are making lots of money, but we're destroying the environment. And overall, the energy is like, why is ethanol not that big a deal anymore? Grow corn, we'll make ethanol out of it, we'll save the planet. It's not cost effective. It costs more to grow the corn and process it than you get out of it, right? Same idea. Maybe someday if we can recycle those materials that are in those worn out turbines, maybe it will be cost effective and environmentally safe. Maybe, but not yet. Anybody live near those? If you drive in US 30 and get into Ohio, you have miles and miles and miles of them. I don't know how many are there. Yeah, solar energy. And solar energy is free, right? All you got to do is install the batteries and install the collectors and all that sort of stuff. And that's good. But there is a consequence to that because those solar collectors and the batteries require those rare metals. I don't know much about that, but I do know that they do have the rare metals in them, and therefore we got the same problem. I just don't know the scale of it. So people who put solar into their home really helps them. But I don't know how much damage is being done to places like China for that. No, it's not. Sorry. What else? Yeah. So geothermal energy, as far as I know, is a very good way to heat your home, to cool your home, to get energy for a home, or for a municipal building or something like that. As far as I know, that is a very reason. Now, the upfront costs are pretty steep. I don't know what it costs for that for a home, but over the long run, if you stay in that home for a long time, it'll pay itself back, and you won't have to use as many fossil fuels or anything. So, as far as I know, that's a pretty reasonable way to go about obtaining energy for your home. But I may be wrong. There may be some drawbacks to it that I don't know, but that's what I would think. Do you have it at your house? Maybe someday. I don't either. What's 1 plus 1 plus 1? It's not 3. It's 1. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, they're all one. You can't win that one, because if you say 1, then I'll say it's 3. Anyway. So if y'all don't have any more questions, or do you have a question? Then bye.